The purpose of going for a hike, ironically, is not to get to the top. It's to be on the trail. If you focus on the freaking trail, whatever step you're on, and you keep reminding yourself, this is gonna lead me somewhere, that is where the meaning comes in your life, because
the best-selling author and host,
the #1 health and wellness podcast,
On Purpose with Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, today's guest is someone who's been on once before, and when she came on last time, you exploded. The community was showing the love, feeling the love, and the feedback and response was incredible that I've been wanting her to come back on. And we were waiting to announce she's got a brand new podcast out herself. So if you don't already listen to her show, I'll announce it in a second, please go and subscribe. It's already crushing it. It's going to be absolutely huge. And I know you're going to love it. I'm speaking about the one and only Mel Robbins, who became one of the most trusted experts in the world on confidence and motivation the hard way, by first screwing up her own life as one of the most widely booked and followed podcast hosts and authors in the world. Mel is sought after by the world's leading brands and medical professionals for her research-backed tools and motivation. At the same time, Mel has amassed millions of followers online with her advice going viral every day, pretty much. Mel is a New York Times bestselling author and self-publishing phenom, and her work includes The High Five Habit, The 5-Second Rule, and the #1 ranking, the Mel Robbins podcast. That's the one that you have to subscribe to. Mel's female-led media company produces provocative, life-changing content with millions of books sold, billions of video views, 6 #1 audiobooks, and one of the most viewed TEDx talks in the world. Mel's work has been translated into 41 languages and has changed the lives of millions of people worldwide. And on top of all of this, Mel is one of my dearest friends. We bumped into each other last week in Montreal where we were both giving keynotes. It was around 10 p.m. and I get this text saying, I heard you were in Montreal. I said, I still am. And we hung out for like a couple of hours at the end of the day. I love this human. I believe in everything she says and does. She lives it all. She is the same off screen as she is on screen. Please welcome to the show, my dear friend, an incredible thinker, Mel Robbins. Mel.
oh my God, can I just hug you?
Yeah, of course you can.
I just love you. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, I just love you, Jay.
Love you too.
Oh.
I just,
You're the best.
I think whenever we've connected, the first time we met, I was thinking about that last week in Montreal. The first time we met, we were also both speaking. And we spent an evening together then and just hit it off. And I appreciate it. That was like 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
So.
I think we've all had this experience where you've been at a bar or you've been at a big party and you look across a room and your eyes meet somebody and it's like immediate, like tractor beam, electric pull. I felt that way about you for a long time just by watching what you were putting out on social media. And so I had a brain and soul crush on you for a long time. And so when we met, it was like, oh my God. And you know what else I love is that I love, like, I get both you and your amazing wife. I love that you are decades younger than me and very creative. And here's what else I love about you. I consider you not only a very dear friend, but my own personal monk. There you have it.
I love it. Just put me in your pocket.
Right there.
But Mel, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Literally, the last time you came on, it was unbelievable. And I've genuinely been wanting to have you back on, like, as much as you want to come back. But I know there's a few things we want to talk about today. And I wanted to start off with this idea that you've always talked about how you learned about things the hard way. There were always challenges. And even now, when we talk offline, we shared that even last week, we were talking about challenges we were both going through in building this opportunity to serve others. And I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think is the hardest thing you're working on right now? Like, what's the most challenging thing you're working on internally or externally? Could be creatively, it could be habit-wise. What is something that you're struggling with or grappling with that you're working through?
Happiness.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, happiness. It's interesting. I was getting ready to come over here this morning And so my daughter goes to school here at the Thornton School for Music. She's a senior and she spent the night with me last night. I'm going to tell you the story because it's relevant about both learning things the hard way and about happiness. So she slept in my bed with me last night and it was so awesome. And I just love her. And she's 22 and she's about to like burst into the next chapter of her life. It is so exciting. And I miss her terribly, terribly. And I'm going to get like totally choked up when I think about it because I live on the other side of the country. And I think one of the hardest things that you have to do in life, if you really love somebody, is to encourage them to leave, to encourage them to grow. Woo! And I can't believe how choked up I'm getting about this because, this just happened this morning and I was laying in bed and she's sound asleep, like sprawled out like most 22-year-old sleep and sweating and, just like this. And I thought, I want to take a picture of this moment. And then I thought, no, she's going to kill me because she looks terrible. And you know how that rolls when you're 20 years old. And so I closed my eyes to just capture the memory. And I thought, why is it that I am always gripping onto the thing that makes me unhappy? What is it about this campaign? I call it the campaign of misery. Like instead of focusing on the fact that here I am, first of all, lucky enough to be in Los Angeles, to be able to have the means to go see her for Parents Weekend, that I have a relationship with her where she would want to come and just snuggle up and spend the night, that she is pursuing her passion and dream of being a singer-songwriter, that she is just killing it. She's happy. Why am I always defaulting to the loss? Mm. And so when I say that I'm working on happiness, what I've realized about myself, Jay, is that I have done a lot of things in life, but I've spent the vast majority of my life being so busy and keeping myself so busy as a means to outrun, I think, a deep-seated unhappiness. Mm. And that when the pandemic hit and I had to slow down and I had to truly say to myself, okay, you can't go anywhere. You cannot regulate your anxiety by running to Target. You can't catch a plane. It's you and you and yourself right now, Mel. And all the coping mechanisms that you used to have that distracted you from the fact that you're just not that happy. Mm. They're not there anymore. And unless I want to drink myself into the ground, which I don't, and numb it, or hit the vape pen or take unless I want to numb it, I got to deal with it. And so I've spent the last 2 years, and I continue to focus right now on the number one goal that I have, which is to learn how to be happy and content wherever I am. And so this morning is the perfect example of catching this profound sadness, which is part of the human experience. Deeply missing somebody is also about loving them, right? And noticing that I was going into the negative. And part of being content and being happy wherever I am is not trying to fix things. It's being okay with things. It's allowing the emotion to rise up and then noticing that there's a different way to feel. Mm-hmm. And so in that moment, I just am doing what I'm doing a lot of, which is just breathing through those deep moments where I'm like, why am I complaining about this? This is so stupid. Why am I obsessing about this thing tomorrow? And I'm not even here right now. And reframing things in a more positive way. And this might surprise people because I am a very positive person. I am a very optimistic person. But when I really slow down, my mind runs 1,000,000 miles an hour, and normally it's 15 steps ahead, which means I'm never content where I am. Mm. And so I've been doing a ton of work in my nervous system, in my body. Instead of going right up here and trying to wrestle with my thoughts, I've been going down into here to just anchor in my body and slow things down and be physically where I am, where my feet are. And so then there was a second thing that happened. So again, I'm working on happiness. That's the thing I'm really working on. It's like a muscle, right? I'm in the bathroom and I am terrible at doing my hair. I know it looks really decent today, but normally I look like a frickin' labradoodle on a humid day. Like, that's just me. I just have never figured out the hair situation. And so I finally said, that's it. I have got to figure out how to make my hair look halfway okay. Like, I'm not even looking for amazing. I'm just looking for okay. And so I was watching YouTube. I'm learning the tutorials. I've got the right sprays. And so Kendall comes rolling in after she wakes up. And I am sitting there trying to curl my hair, right, with this big fat curling iron. I'm terrible at it, Jay. And all of a sudden, I hit my freaking ear. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh my God, I've just burned my ear. And Kendall casually goes, well, you got to learn somehow. And she walks out of the room. I think there is so much wisdom in that, because that is how you learn. That is how you learn how close to hold a curling iron to your ear. You burn yourself. And then your whole body absorbs the lesson, and you don't go that close to the fire next time. Mm. And I'm doing that dance with happiness and contentment. That when I feel the fire of discontent or friction or complaining or looking for what's wrong, I pull the curling iron a little away from the ear. And I go back into a safer, calmer place.
That was a beautiful answer. I didn't know what to expect when I asked that question. I really appreciate you going that inward with it, because you could have gone a number of ways. I fully understand and empathize what you're saying, because my mom and my family do something similar. So, and I love my mom. I have a great relationship with my mom. She's amazing. And anything that's good about me is because of her. But every time I go back to London, the day I land, my family will say, well, you're only here for 21 days. I'm like, 21 days? Like, that's 3 weeks. Even if you added up all the hours weekly that you spend with time with someone, it probably won't account for 21 full days with full presence. And then a week will go and be like, oh, you've only got 14 days left. Or you've only got 7 days left. Or you're leaving today. And that mindset just keeps forcing you to think that day 21 is day one.
Right.
As in that day 21 days left is the same as 1 day left. Mm-hmm. And you're living all 21 days as there's only 1 day left. And I've taken time, and I've sat with my mom so many times to have that conversation with her. And I said, Mom, if you celebrate that we have 21 days and we're going to make the most of it, and we're going to create new memories and create new experiences, then you're going to be happier for these 21 days. And yes, you're going to miss me the same. It's not going to change that. And I'm going to miss you. So I have personal experience of that on the other end of it, with having that conversation with my mom, where she's really grown in understanding how that thought hasn't served her.
Right.
And she's so much happier for it now when I go back. So that I definitely identify with that. What you touched on at the end there, though, was really interesting to me. When you talk about happiness, it sounds like you believe you deserve it, and you sound like you believe it's yours for the taking. Like, it's like, it is a clear goal, direction, it's there.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened is, subconsciously or consciously, so many of us don't feel we deserve happiness, or we don't feel we're worthy of happiness. Or we actually think mediocrity is a safer place to live, because then we don't have our expectations being unmet. We don't have the fall of, I wanted this, but I got this.
Right.
And so I had a friend the other day who sent me a message, and he said, take a look at this. And it was all about how really we shouldn't strive for happiness. We should strive for mediocrity, because mediocrity is where most people will end up. So that
sucks.
Literally, this is the message. So my friend messaged me, he goes, what do you think of this?
I think it sucks. That's what Mel Robbins thinks. I think it's the worst advice I've ever freaking heard. How about that? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Here's the thing, Jay. So one of the things I also wanted to say is that I'm 54, and it's taken me a long time to figure out that I was actually not a happy person. And I don't think I really truly understood what happiness is. And maybe I'm using the wrong word. Maybe the word is the problem, because I always associated happiness with like parties and laughter, and like I'm just like full of joy, and I just, it's like this very positive thing. And again, I am a positive person. I'm a very optimistic person. But if you were to put a speaker on my head and broadcast the things I said to myself, you would literally check me in to the 7th floor at Mass General Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, because it was a constant drumbeat of negativity. And as I, one by one, Jay, started to fix the problems in my marriage and my finances, with my anxiety, as I built a business, a lot of people are surprised to learn that most of what you see that I've built has been built in the last 6 years, literally. And so as I started fixing things outside, that default drumbeat did not go away. It just was a situation where I no longer had anything outside of me that was rationally wrong. So I turned it back on me and just started hammering me in crazy ways. I'll give you an example. So this is where I started to have this breakthrough. So I was sitting, my husband and I have just bought a house in Vermont. And I know you guys, are in your new home. It's an incredible thing to do. It is our dream house. It's the house that his parents built. It's the family house. We not only were able to purchase this thing, we've been able to completely renovate it, make it our own. This place is the closest place to God that I have ever been. We sit nestled between mountains with a 140-mile view straight down a valley with cascading. Like, it is just spectacular. When I would sit in therapy sessions 8 years ago, and my therapist would ask me to come up with like a, like a totem or a spiritual guide or a vision, whatever, for truth or God or whatever, it's always this view. And so lo and behold, 8 years later, we freaking live there. And I'm sitting on this covered deck looking down the valley. My daughter is sitting next to me, our other daughter who lives in Boston, who's 23, and it's Sunday. And normally on Sundays, I'm not even present on Sundays because I'm now got the Sunday scaries. I'm now thinking about the week ahead. She is starting to now do that. Okay, I got to get going. I got to pack the car. I got to get going. I got a big week of work this week. And it's 7:30 in the morning on a spectacular day. And the energy is starting. And I recognize the energy because that is the campaign of misery that I have lived with for 50 years. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. That's me. And then I stopped in that moment, Jay, and I thought, I don't feel that right now. I just feel that exactly where I am, looking at this view, is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it was so profound. It's almost like that moment where Eckhart Tolle has on the bench in the beginning of The Power of Now, where I have this profound experience where I think, wait a minute, is this what happiness is? That I'm not 15 steps ahead? I'm just able to be right here without the anxiety, without the stress. I mean, that is like a revolutionary experience for me. I don't think I had ever not felt the default of a revved up nervous system, an anxious mind, or a to-do list that was a mile long. And I don't want to go back to that sort of frenetic busyness that creates chronic stress. And, the challenge for me right now is how do I stay in a space that's happy? Because I love the game of building a business. I love pushing myself. I love and I realized, oh, wait, you actually need both. You need deep spiritual quiet time, and you need the busyness of Los Angeles or Boston or New York in small sprints. But that can't be your default anymore, woman.
And that's such a great realization and reflection, I think, when you come to that. And it takes a lot of self-acceptance to come to that, because I think we think of life as binary, like you have to make a choice. You're either going to be a hustler or you're going to be peaceful. You're either going to be a winner or you're going to be a loser. You're either going to be wisdom and Zen or you're going to be money and materialistic, right? And it's almost like you feel you have to make those choices early in life. And I think when you came in here, we were talking about something, and I really, really think it's something that a lot of our listeners will resonate with. The idea that so many of us experience pain of not going after what we want or what we need or what we feel is our calling because of the pain that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so we settle for the pain of where we are.
Yeah.
And I think those two ideas are related because, again, we think there's this choice you have to make at any point in time where it's like, I'm either going to live the life of my dreams or I'm going to be stuck forever. And then we're like, okay, well, I'll be stuck forever because my dreams seem so far away. I remember being there, and it's always hard to help everyone who's listening realize how much I felt that way.
So how old were you?
This was 6 years ago for me.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's right. You and I had this crazy parallel path.
Yeah, 6 years ago. So 6 years ago, I was working a safe corporate job. 6 months from now, I was about to be married to Radhi, and I was making £31,500 a year. And that was my salary at this company. And I was doing extremely well at the company, so I had a good track to progress there. And I'm sitting there going, I've been there for 2 years, and I'm like, I don't think this is where I'm meant to be. I was looking at people who'd been at the company for decades. I've always said to people, look 10, 20 years ahead of you and look at that person in a company and go, is that where I want to be? And I was like, well, even if they paid me as much as that person's paid, even if I got all the benefits that person got, I don't think I want to do that in my 50s. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, then I have to take a risk. So, and obviously that was like a 2-year journey of even convincing myself. Let's talk about that. If someone's sitting there right now, passionate about something, wanting to get inspired, wanting to do something, but they're settling for the pain of where they are. And that's why I asked that mediocrity and happiness question.
Yeah.
It is really that dance between I'm going to settle for where I'm at or I'm going to be where I want to be. How do you think about that journey? How do you start?
You know what just popped into my mind in a weird way? Cancer. If you got diagnosed with a cancer that was treatable, would you try to treat your cancer?
Yes.
Of course you would. Because otherwise it would kill you. When you feel this call or this burning desire, and I feel like we all have this flame inside of us. We are not like a boiler where the pilot light can blow out. That is not how a human being is wired. You, whether you're stuck, whether you're in pain, whether you're suffering, you still have this flame inside you that is burning. And when you actively engage in your own campaign of misery and you actively tell yourself the reasons why it's not going to work, or the reasons why you can't do it, or the reasons why now is not the time, or you're never going to make it happen, or it was great for Jay or great for for Mel, but nothing ever works out for. When you engage in your own campaign of misery, you are creating literally a cancer inside of you that eats at you. And we don't realize that by engaging in this campaign of misery, because it's active, that flame is burning inside you and you are actively convincing yourself not to do anything. It is an active engagement. That's why I call it a campaign, because that flame is going to keep on burning, which is why the campaign has to get louder and the excuses have to get louder. And you know what starts to happen? Is you start to listen to that campaign and you start to feel pain because there's something burning inside of you. And the only cure for this is to stop listening to that campaign and simply start taking small steps, just one every day toward the thing that you want. I talk to my daughter about this all the time. So she dreams, absolutely dreams, of being a singer-songwriter, solo artist with a successful career, literally stadium tours. And if I'm being perfectly honest, this kid has all of the talent and all of the, like, she's one of those 5-tool players, and she is a great person, kind, and just awesome. And she's even in a program for it, the best in the country. She has everything. She just has to do the work. What is the work? Well, the work is simply writing crappy songs every day. The work is not listening to the campaign of misery, because all around you, you're going to see evidence of this person's better, or that person this, or this one's that, or there. When you listen to that campaign in your head, it is like a cancer inside. It causes pain because you can feel when you are giving up on your own potential. And that is the worst kind of life to live.
And we're all, I remember I was the president of that campaign in my own life. Like, you know, I was like, when you, and I want people to understand this, is that everyone you think is doing something good with their life, at one point they were the presidents of this campaign of misery in their own life. I remember saying, well, that never's going to happen for me. Those things only happen to those people. I remember also watching things, and this was the key one that I realized had to go. Me and my friends, and my dream when I was young was to be a spoken word rap artist. Like, that was my goal. Like, I've always loved words. I've always loved having a large vocabulary. I've always loved bending words and making them rhyme. And I think that's why I love words today. And what we do so much is that. And we would sit there and we would watch rappers or artists that were up and coming, and we would critique them, and we would almost talk badly about them. We would criticize them, and we talk about how rubbish they were and how untalented they were, and if we had those opportunities, how good we'd be. And I realized that today's culture is propagating that even more, because now we're just scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and you'll see someone who's doing what you want to do, and you may think you can do it better. But instead of doing it, we're spending our time watching someone else doing it and going, well, that sucks. That's rubbish.
Right.
I actually have friends who message me stuff like that sometimes, and they'll be like, look, you know, I've been wanting to make videos for a while, and they'll send me someone who's made a bad video in their opinion. And I said, you know what's really interesting? When you're on social media, you look at everyone who's doing worse than you. I said, when I'm on social media, I look at everyone who's doing better than me and learn, right? It's like, there's those two mindsets. You're either criticizing someone, or you're creating and learning and growing. And so I just feel what you're saying is so true. And I think I spent so much time thinking I had something, but then not doing anything with it.
Yeah. So a couple things.
Yes.
I want to give everybody a visual.
Yes.
Because I find Jay's into words, I got to have a picture. Like, my mind is not the words mind. You are either in the stands commenting about the game, or you're on the court playing it. And right now, I want you to think about that flame inside you, that dream that you have. And I'm going to go back to my daughter, who is on the court, but she will be the first to say that for many years, she was engaged in her own campaign of misery, sitting in the stands, telling herself why she can't get on the court right now. And so I like that visual, because at any moment, it literally like cuts right to the truth. Are you in the stands criticizing the people who are playing the game, or being jealous of them, or in the stands telling yourself it's not time to jump in, or are you on the freaking court? There's only two places to be in life. That's it. There is no middle ground here. And so what I want to say also is that being in the stands, it is loud. It is an active thing that you're doing. This is not a passive thing that we do to ourselves. We actively argue against our dream and our potential. And that is 1,000% tied to your happiness, to your confidence, because if you are arguing against your own God-given potential, you are actively destroying your confidence. You're actively destroying possibility in your life. And here's the thing, you freaking know it.
Yeah.
People know when they have imposter syndrome. They know it. They talk about it openly. And I also hate the term fake it till you make it. And here's why. When you say, I'm just going to fake it till you make it, you are calling yourself a fake. It amplifies your self-doubt. Instead, say this, I'm going to get on the court and try until I make it. Because the pain of sitting in the stands and never getting down there is way greater than tripping on the court. Way greater. You're causing and this is the thing I want people to understand. You are causing yourself so much pain by laughing off and making jokes about how it's never going to happen. You are causing yourself so much pain by thinking about it. Get out of the freaking stands and get back on the court in your life. I did this to myself for years about the podcast. You know, I'll tell you some insane stories. So here I am, crazy successful in the audiobook world. The most successful self-published audiobook in the history of audiobooks is the 5-second rule. That leads to a 7-book Audible original deals with Audible because of the success of that. And I kept telling myself, Jay, I'd look at you, and I'd look at a ton of our other friends who, have these amazing podcasts, you, Rich Roll, just everybody. And I'd be like, I missed the boat. I'm too late. There's 2 million podcasts out there now. I can't do this. I don't have anything different to say than Jay. Jay's already got, it covered. Like, why would I jump in there now? And then I would in the stands for 6 years. And you know what else I would tell myself? Well, you're just successful because Audible's your partner. And if you were to try this, you're going to fall flat on your face. And you don't have time. And here's another thing that I tell myself. Well, who on earth is going to come to Boston to sit in a studio with you, Mel? Everybody's remote now. Boston is not a media place. Nobody travels there. Like, just in the freaking stands, telling myself, no, no, no. Now, here's the thing about campaigns of misery. It does not actually mute the heartache and the pull that you have, because your dreams actually can't leave you. They're meant for you. Mm-hmm. And so all that campaigning or the drinking or the numbing out or the avoiding the thing that is inside you, mm-hmm. it doesn't make the dream go away. It just creates more pain. And so finally, it was 2 years ago that I'm like, I have to take my own advice. And I got to make some major changes, because I knew when I was going to step into the podcast space that I was going to make it the only thing that I was doing, that I needed to complete all the speaking engagements that I had. I needed to create different boundaries around, I had to get serious about taking the steps and getting on that court. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And a lot of people don't know that I actually got my start in 2007 hosting a local radio show. And I have wanted to get back to radio for almost 12 years because I love the intimacy of it. Mm. And so, and I can't, this, you can't share your life in real time in an audiobook.
No, definitely not.
You can't do it in a 60-second reel. Mm-hmm. But I, too, sat there in the stands, actively engaged in my campaign of misery. Here's another area of my life where I engaged in campaign of misery: loneliness. I have been profoundly lonely for a while now. And by lonely, I don't mean alone, because there's people around me. But I have, and I think a lot of people feel this way, and I know a lot of women do, particularly when your kids get older and the social, things change. And I think a lot of us are struggling with adult friendship. And especially coming out of quarantine, mm-hmm. people are now kind of, I don't want to leave my house, not because of anything going on, but because I like being home.
Yeah.
And so I started to get serious about the fact that I was really in the stands in my life, complaining to myself that I didn't see my friends, that I don't have friends, that I'm really lonely, but I wasn't on the court. What are you going to do about it? Because it's easy to actually start making friends if you send texts every day to people and you make plans.
Yeah.
Oh, Jay's in Montreal. Why don't I text him? Yeah. Oh, he's in the same hotel. Why don't I go up 7 floors and go see him? Because my monk is in the penthouse. You know what I'm saying?
I love what you're saying. I can resonate with it so much. And there's a journey from
Where is your campaign of misery right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Where is my current campaign of misery?
Where are you in the stands in your life, Jay?
Mine is actually, I grew up loving, I went to public speaking and drama school. And public speaking became a huge part of my life, and drama stopped. Mm. And drama is something I'd love to get back into.
Really?
I loved acting growing up. I loved the idea of getting into someone else's emotions. And I loved the idea of learning about new characters and understanding. And I keep wanting to do it. And 3 years ago, when the Bad Boys movie came out, I was asked by Sony to be in their theatrical trailer for TV. And so I played the role of a therapist with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And I had so much, it was so uncomfortable because I hadn't done it for so long. I went to drama school for 7 years. It was so uncomfortable doing it. And I got an acting coach that week, and I practiced and I learned all my lines. And then I got there on the day and they gave me a new script. They said, the script's changed. And I'm going, guys, I had 5 days. I knew about this 5 days ago. I had an acting coach every day for 2 hours a day. And they give me a new script. Then they come in 10 minutes before. I've been waiting around for 2 hours learning this new script. We get there and they say, oh, by the way, Will and Martin have scrapped the script. There's no more script. They're just going to freestyle, and you're going to have to freestyle. I'm like, you want me to freestyle with two of the greatest to ever do it, and I'm not a comedian.
Now, were you friends with Will at this point?
Not in the way we are today.
Okay, so like, because I think people might be like, yeah, but you guys are friends. So you're like, but this is like not a friend of mine.
Yeah, we were acquaintances, but not in the relationship.
I think that's important.
Yeah, and I didn't know Martin at all. I'd never met him in my life. And so I am fully feeling imposter syndrome. I'm fully in my discomfort zone. And I had the most fun.
You're on the court.
Yeah, I was on the court and I had fun. But then since that day, I retreated. and so that's been, if I'm completely honest, that's where my heart is. I love the idea of getting to be, I've always loved biographies, and I've always loved autobiographies. I've always loved true stories. And so if I had the opportunity to learn or play or be in a true story, that would fill my heart with a lot of joy.
Is there somebody that you would dream of playing?
No, I don't have that. That answer I don't have clear. But yeah, that would be my honest answer to that question, of that's something I'm in the stands on. There's so many excuses. I'm like, well, Jay, if you did that, then it discredits all the work you've done up till now. Well, Jay, if you did that and it doesn't work out, then what about the people that you coach in that industry? Like, if you did it and you did it really well, then people will call you a sellout because you chose to do something completely different. And it's not saying I want to do that and stop doing what I do today. It's just that there's a part of that expression that I'm so creatively inspired by that I'd like to try.
Yeah.
And again, it's try, right? It's not, and I wanted to so that's what I want to talk to you about. It's, what was the heart of my question before? I'm so glad you asked me that. Thank you. I've never publicly talked about that. I've never shared that really with anyone beyond my wife. What is the difference? Because I think this is where it goes wrong. I meet a lot of people who talk to me about their dreams, and even mine, and I want to clarify mine in a second, the one I just shared with you. What is the difference between a dream and delusion? And I'm going to share my initial thoughts before I hear yours. When I say I would like to do more drama or acting or experiment with that phase of my life, my dream is not at this point in time to win an Oscar. My dream is to try to creatively express myself and see whether this vehicle is a form that brings me joy, happiness, and meaning in my life.
Yeah.
That to me is not delusional, because it is giving myself the opportunity to put my using visuals, like put my, what are they called? Stabilizers onto my bike and see if this is real.
Right.
I often find people whose first dream is, I want to build $1 billion company, and they've never built a business at all, or have business experience. Or I hear, I want this to be the number one thing in the world. And while those are nice aspirations, I'm not sure that I actually think, and this is just my personal take, I never had those when I started. And I feel that sometimes without the skills, without doing the learning, without doing the experimenting, those things can actually stop you from doing it because it's so hard, it's so far away, and there's such a big way to fall. So I want to understand, how do you decipher between dream and delusion?
When you talk about delusion, what I hear is like arrogance and conceitedness. Now, and let me explain the difference here. Because I think confidence is this willingness to try and this belief in yourself and what you're trying to do, right? I think arrogance and conceitedness is thinking you're better than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so when you frame the delusion as this grandiose thing, it feels like it's coming from insecurity.
Right.
It feels like it's coming from wanting to be better than, versus coming from a place where you're willing to take the risks and try and get on the court of life in a way that's aligned with this thing inside you. And so that's what I process in my own brain when you ask me the question, what's the difference between dreams and delusions?
Yeah.
Now, if you have a true dream, is it ever delusional? And my answer to that is never. And here's why. I believe that dreams are not meant to be achieved. I believe that your dreams are a directional signal. That the dream is out there in a different chapter of your life, calling you from this moment toward that direction. And that the reason why you still have this burning flame inside you that relates all the way back to something that you did when you were younger
11,
that you frickin' loved is because when you walk toward acting and what that requires of you to get on the court and walk toward that dream. And look, the dream could be an Oscar. The dream could be something like that's an award. It doesn't matter. It's in the lane of acting. What I believe about dreams is that the dreams are deeply personal. They are connected to that flame inside you. You were hardwired with them when you were born. It is absolutely part of why you're curious about things, why you're interested in things naturally. This is part of your natural intelligence. And that when you get on the court and you start walking toward them, that is what's supposed to happen. Because if you allow yourself to take on some roles in acting, it's going to make something come alive inside of you. That's the purpose of your dreams. It's to make that flame burn brighter inside of you. It's about you awakening something, and your dreams are the directional signal that are trying to point you in what way to move forward. Going back to my daughter, will she ever have a stadium tour? I don't freaking know. She might. That's not the point. The point is to have something come alive inside herself by getting on the court of her life and writing music and putting it out there.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. The reason why I wanted to launch the Mel Robbins podcast is not so that it could become the #1 podcast in the world. Of course I have those goals. Of course I want to be the #1 female podcast host in the world. Of course that's what I want. But the reason why I am pursuing this is because I wanted to connect with people at a deeper level. I knew that I would come creatively alive. I knew that I wanted to build an ongoing conversation that was deeper. And I also knew I wanted to learn more, because when you're constantly putting out content, or you're standing on stages, or you're writing books, it's kind of a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
And so part of my solve for loneliness was to stop griping about it to myself and to go, well, what would actually make me feel more connected? What would be of more service to people? What would create a deeper impact? That's why I'm doing this thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. That the clarity, and the reason why I really want to get this really clear for people is that I had a friend last night I was talking to, and they want to start a podcast, and it was the most beautiful intention, right? Everyone wants to start a podcast today. Everyone wants to start anything today.
And they
right?
should.
It's very and they should. But what I've learned is that anything I've started intentionally has not only more likely brought out the consistency and creativity for me, it's not only been successful, it's also made me happy. And so what I'm trying to get to is, how do you plant a seed that goes all the way from not only growing consistently to giving you joy as it grows, to then giving you that flower, to then giving you that fruit, to then giving you the seed to do more, rather than like, I got the flower, we then cut it, it then broke. And, so when I look at it, I go, I think a lot of people are so obsessed with the result that all they get might be the result. And then you have nothing else. And then that result feels dissatisfying. It's like when we had Gwyneth Paltrow on the podcast, she talked about how like winning an Oscar in her teens, like removed all aspiration, because she goes, well, what do you do next, right? Like when you've done that, you've done the epitome, the peak of that career in your teens. And now it's like, well, what do you do next? And it's like, well, if it was only about the result, not speaking about her, but if it was only about the result, then you stop. And so I just want to clarify that what you just said is you started it not to be #1. You started it because of the impact you wanted to make, the stories you wanted to tell,
Totally.
the connection with your audience. And I think if people leaned more into that, to me, that's the real dream.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I keep bringing up my daughter because she's an artist.
Yeah.
And when she leans into the fact that she's not trying to impress her friends in her pop music program, she's not trying to impress anybody.
Yeah.
She wants to tell stories with her music that inspire people.
Yeah.
And when you really get into the reason why you're doing something. So I'm going to give everybody another visual, because there are two visuals that I think about a lot in life. For me, one of the most powerful things that I use to coach myself is that when I'm in the middle of something, I always remind myself I'm on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So in launching this podcast, something I've been thinking about for more than 8 years, something I've talked myself out of for a long time, something that I finally stepped on the court and started working for about 2 years ago. And now we're here. I know that this is literally step one on a long suspension bridge that is leading me somewhere. And when you remind yourself that you're just on the bridge, you stop focusing on how long is it going to take and what's it going to feel like. And I'm not there yet. You are on the bridge, and you are going to be on the bridge until you get to this other side. And then guess what happens when you get to the other side? There's another freaking bridge.
Yeah.
Every single episode is like its own bridge.
Yeah.
The other visual that I use a lot is a trail leading up a mountain, because the research is so conclusive, and Jay and I can try to beat it into your head, that meaning comes from working on something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it again. Meaning comes from working on something with intention that has importance to you. It's that simple. You can create meaning in your life by planting a garden if it's important to you. And for me, I think a lot about, the act of going for a hike. The purpose of going for a hike, ironically, is not to get to the top. It's to be on the trail. And if you constantly stare at the top, you're going to be out of breath. You're going to tell yourself you have so much longer. When are we ever going to get there? And you are going to miss the entire point of your freaking life, which is the ride, the trail, the bridge, the mile markers, all of it. And so part of my desire to be happier is to continually remind myself it is not about getting on that mountain, because when you get to the top of that mountain, the top of one mountain's just the bottom of another one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going up, eventually you got to come back down. Like, that is just life. If you focus on the freaking trail, whatever step you're on, and you keep reminding yourself, this is going to lead me somewhere, that is where the meaning comes in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jay and I will both tell you guys that you put all this effort into writing a book, it publishes, you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we want it to be something else. We want to think that there is this silver bullet that if you get to the mountain, if you launch the podcast, if you meet the person of your dreams, then you'll be happy. And the truth is, for me personally, happiness was really about ending campaigns of misery in my mind.
Mm.
It was about identifying where I was arguing against myself and my potential.
Mm-hmm.
And it was allowing myself to get back on the trail or start walking across that bridge.
Yeah, that's I love those visuals. They're so powerful and so beautiful. And when you said the bridge one, it reminded me of, I believe this is from the Christian tradition. I believe it's from the Bible, but this statement says, the world is like a bridge. Don't build your house on it, cross over it. And I've always spiritually gravitated towards that statement very deeply. So when you said bridge, that was the first thing that came to my mind. The world is like a bridge.
I also like that term.
Yeah.
A couple reasons. So, I was telling everybody earlier about how I woke up this morning and I'm here visiting my daughter, who's 22 and a senior in college. And I felt this profound sadness. And I noticed it and I allowed myself to feel it, because I wouldn't